Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 6, Episode 6. Get your kicks on Episode 6. And today we're going to talk about what it means why do you need all this fancy stuff, when it's just for YouTube. It's just for a YouTube video. I'll explain what that means. We'll dive into it. And I hope it's actually helpful. I have some key takeaways that I hope you get out of it. And, that's what we're going to be talking about this week. But before we jump into that specifically, a couple things to catch up on. First being that the mic of this week, the mic I'm using this week, I've been trying to use a different microphone every episode this season because why not? And this week I'm on the Rode NT1, which I think is a really fantastic condenser microphone for NT1. I've used that joke many times now, so it's not even worth the rim shot, but it's a good microphone. The NT1, it's a condenser mic. I have it in a shock mount, and I don't think Rode makes this shock mount anymore, which is shocking because it's so good. But you can still get the NT1 in a shock mount. The thing I like the most about this shock mount is it mounts in a mesh metal windscreen, which works really well. So I'll try to take it out of here real quick. For example, plosives, I apologize if you're listening in headphones, but without the windscreen, Peter Piper pitched a podcast with the windscreen there. It makes it so difficult for any plosive pressure to get through there. And that has nothing to do with the microphone. That's just metal mesh windscreens. Super cool. So anyway, that's what you're listening to this week is the Rode NT1, of course, going into the Rodecaster Pro and all right. Now, before we jump into today's topic, I felt so terrible because after I recorded last week's Q&A, I got a few Qs after the A's had already been done, but I don't want to leave those out. So I have a question. This is basically a follow-up from last week's episode, and this is from Pete Fletcher. And I gotta say I apologize because Pete sent in a video submission which is so wonderfully well shot and composed, and it's awesome, and it looks great, and this is an audio-only version episode this week, so I get to see Pete's super high-quality video, and you will just get to hear Pete's super high-quality voice and audio.
Hey, Tom, Pete Fletcher here. I've got a comment and a question for you, and I'll start with the comment. The comment is simple. Thank you. Thank you for all you do for the content creation community. I could spend an hour telling you how much I appreciate all you do, but the short version is this. I work for technical marketing for a very large company, and I do podcasting primarily, and it's audio, but I also do some video creation for technical videos. And I've really had a strong desire to enhance or to make the videos better, to up my game. And so I started looking at YouTube channels. I discovered yours about 6 months ago. And oh my goodness, I was completely blown away at the quality of content that you're creating, and just how simple you make it look. So I dove in, I learned everything I could, and I still continue to learn on your site, but I've watched all your videos. I read your website up and down, and I've definitely acquired a lot of gear based on your recommendations for sure. And I love it all. It's really been helpful. But I've always been curious, though. I know, just an aside here, like I said, I've been podcasting for a while, and I use the Heil PR40, and I've never heard you mention it. So I was curious, have you ever tried that microphone, and what your comments would be on it? But that's not my question. My question is, one of the things I bought from you, I've got the Canon A7S III, and I'm not a camera guy at all. So I took the recommendation. I got this lens that you have, the Sony 24 1.4 GM, and man, it's a beauty. It's a really nice lens. But one of the things I noticed out of the box is that the bokeh on it was probably a little too much. It actually made my background look fake. Like almost, I had people say that it looked like I was on a Zoom, like a Zoom background. And so I was just curious, what I could do to make that, is there a setting on the actual lens itself, on the camera that I could make, that I can enhance the video or to make it look better or at least more realistic? Is it a lighting thing? I'd love to get your thoughts on the best way to take advantage of this awesome lens. And so that is my question. My My closing thoughts are simple. Just again, really, I heard the episodes that you've done both on the couples table and the regular podcast about comments. And my only thoughts about that is just understand that the overwhelming majority of people that consume your content are truly appreciative. Your passion is contagious, and people feel that. They get inspired, they learn, and they make themselves better content creators. For the folks out there that are going to comment on your looks or on whether or not they think you're being sponsored, it's ridiculous. And I don't want to say ignore them, because I understand your point about, at least acknowledge that and to at least, correct in some way. But the truth is you're never going to convince some people, either way. Just know that the overwhelming majority of people that may never, ever reach out to you or connect with you are consuming it and are appreciating it. So you're spreading really good stuff out there. And I just want to thank you for that. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Pete. I appreciate that. And of course, as I said before, this is an audio only episode, but dang, your video and your setup, it looks so good. So a few things that I want to say to respond to that. I'm so sorry I couldn't get into the Q&A episode last week, but first off, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. It's really great to hear. And, the talk about comments, we're going to be talking about comments a little bit later today, but in a sort of different way. But you're totally right that, the vast majority of comments that I've received.
Hey, Tom, Pete Fletcher here. I've got a comment, Pete, and a question.
I know, Pete, I know, but it's okay. Sorry, I just hit the play button again. I should close that window. That's really funny. A professional would edit that out, and yet here we are. I do want to focus on that they are positive, the vast majority of comments that we get, and it really does matter. Like, the fact that I or anyone, you can start a podcast, you can sit and talk into a microphone for a while and put it on the internet. And after a while, people could listen to it. And then people might even send you like really nice messages. I mean, we've talked about how Heather and I would have never met without YouTube. But I mean, Pete and I wouldn't know who each other are without the magic of the internet. And to be able to like share an excitement for something, to share kind words, to be supportive. If I've created stuff that's helped him figure out, stuff on his audio video journey, and he's creating something that's helping me feel good about what I do and positive about what I do, that's pretty fantastic. So the thing that I'll say, speaking both as a consumer and creator of content online, is if you're watching something and there is a comment option, maybe it's a YouTube video, maybe it's not, but if you're consuming something that a person has made and you have the ability to comment in a way that they might see it, and you're having a positive thought about the thing, comment the thought. Because there's so many times I've caught myself where I'm watching something and I think, oh, this is such an interesting video, this is really cool, it looks really good, whatever it might be, and I almost just like have the thought and move on, and I have to try to catch myself and go like, oh wait, no, if you have that thought, type it out, like let the person know. And I think that's a good practice to get into, because it really does help, and it really, really does make a difference. And so I appreciate all the kind words, Pete. But to get into some of the points that you brought up, I'm really, really happy that you're learning stuff from my channel. My channel's been a helpful resource in addition to, I'm guessing, many other resources. I appreciate all the kind words about production. It's really fun to look back. I was fortunate in that I had a background in audio video stuff, so the technical side of starting YouTube wasn't as intimidating for me as it is for some people who are like brand new to the world of cameras and things. And that's just, I was fortunate. I was deficient in other areas, but I was proficient in that area. And so that's cool. But even going back and looking at earlier videos, it's like, wow, you try to make each thing just a little bit better in some way than the one before it. And, sometimes you don't succeed, but overall you have an upward trend of progress. And then when you get to a point, you look back, you realize, dang, I really kind of came a long way there. And that's a cool thing that I think we can all appreciate with anything that we make. And sometimes you don't realize it, in the midst of it. And there's really no shortcut, because a lot of times people will see where you're at right now and they'll go, hey, how do you do exactly what you're doing right now? Because I just want to skip the whole part where you have to figure it out. And, you can give pointers or maybe some time savers or whatever. But in general, you kind of just got to go through it. You just got to make stuff. You just got to go. There's no shortcuts for some of that. So it's like you just keep making things and keep trying to get a little bit better. I'm super happy that my website has been a resource. I'd really like to turn that into more of a resource because it's really fun to have. You mentioned the Heil microphone. I've never used one, but I was in like tertiary contact last year with Bob Heil, which that sounds funny when I say it, like a Bob Heil, like the founder of Heil microphones or the owner. And I was hoping to sort of like make more of a connection to just like, I know the microphones are good. It's kind of like with Earthworks. I know the mics are amazing. So I'm not really interested in like, wow, this is a super good microphone. Of course, I'm really interested in like the history and the philosophy and the journey of those companies that got to the point where they can make such good things. So who knows, maybe in the future, something like that will be able to happen, and we'll see. That's really fun. But now to get to the meat of your question, which was about the Sony 24 and the depth of field, or basically too much blurriness in your background. It all comes down to aperture. So you asked about lighting and stuff like that. Obviously it's all related, but it's just aperture. If you've got the lens cranked to f1.4, which is what I do, that's going to give you the most shallow depth of field, which means the background's going to be maximum blurriness, maximum bokeh, all that. And, it's just personal preference. But depending on your setup, I 100% know what you mean, that sometimes it can be such a sharp contrast between what's in focus and what's out of focus that it does look green screen and it looks artificial. And that's clearly not what you want because it's gotten to the point where it's distracting. And so the thing to do is to just close your aperture a little bit. If you're shooting at f1.4, I would suggest trying like f2.8 to start with, and that'll probably keep your background pretty blurry, but it will also, but not as much. So there won't be such a sharp contrast between you and the background. Since you are closing the aperture, you might need to increase your lighting or boost your ISO a little bit to compensate for that because less light is getting into the camera. And, if that's not enough, you can fine tune it from there. But I would start with 2.8. And if it's still too blurry, close it down more, go to like f5.6 or something like that, f4, give that a shot. But I have a feeling 2.8 would be pretty good. And the reason that you and I might be using the same lens at the same settings and getting different results, speaking of comments, I do get comments all the time that say like, your background's way too blurry, stop it, knock it off, your video's out of focus. And it's like, those don't really bother me because it is just personal preference. And I get it. Some people don't like that. I do, having grown up filming with camcorders. Shallow depth of field is something that was impossible to achieve. So I kind of, I love it. But there is, how much space behind me? I answer this question a lot, but I never really know. There's probably about 7 feet, so just over 2 meters of space between me and my back wall. And the camera is about 1 meter, 3 feet away from me. So that's kind of giving my level of background blur at f1.4. If your camera is further away from you, closer to you, if you have more space between you and your background wall, that's going to all change. So that's why we could be using the same lens at the same settings, but have different results where maybe like, especially if you have more space behind you than I do, it makes sense that it would be more blurred out, which would give that more artificial look. So just start by closing up your aperture a little bit and see if that helps. And I hope that it does. And appreciate the message. Feel free to send a message anytime. And this is not a Q&A episode, but if you have thoughts, speaking of comments, if you have thoughts and things and you want to be included, of course, you can always send them to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, text, video, voice, whatever. And I can always include it in a future episode, whether or not it's a dedicated Q&A episode. So thanks again, Pete. Thanks again to everyone who submitted questions last week. And now let's jump in. We're going to talk about comments, like Pete just said, but we're going to do it in sort of a different way and talk about something that it does like bother me. So that's why I want to talk about it. But I actually hope there's a positive takeaway from it. And it does stem from a discussion that I've had many times, but it hinges on a comment I got this week, which I found very interesting. So what it has to do is with the idea of something being just for YouTube. Last year, I don't remember when it was, maybe last summer, Gerald and Dunn invited me to be part of a video he made with a whole bunch of YouTube creators where we all got to have 30 seconds to show our setups. And it was super fun. Like I just got a message from Gerald one day that was like, "Hey, I'm doing a video. Do you want to do this?" I was like, "Sure." And he said, "Okay, you have 30 seconds. Can you get the video to me by Wednesday?" And that's as much guidance as there was. It wasn't like a, you need to include this sponsored product or anything like that. So I did a quick video in my setup at that time, which is a really fun editing project because I think just going over the basic setup as quickly as I could was 4 minutes long, and I had to cut that down into 30 seconds. So my part is like whiplash, but I really like it's really good because the whole thing, like the 4 minutes would have been good, I thought. But smashing it down to 30 seconds, it's like I'm like kind of proud of how every frame is vital to that little segment there. It's really cool. Like that was a cool creative constraint to have. And because I am the way that I am, I got that message and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this. I don't want to be left out. Like I love Gerald and have a lot of respect for him. So it's also like, I don't want to be a flaky person. I don't know who else he's asking or what he's relying on. So I did that as quickly as I could. He sent me the message like one afternoon or evening. I filmed and edited the video the very next morning. So like, within 15 hours of him contacting me, he had the finished video. And I think he just sort of put the video together in order because I was lucky enough to be like first or second in the thing. Like there's like, the video's pretty long and I'm right there at the beginning, which is pretty cool. And there's like creators in there that I really admire. So I know we didn't like know each other in the video, but it's still cool to be in a video with people who I've like watched and admired for many, many years. And that was not long after I got the Sony a7S III. And so I talked about the Sony was my main camera. I still had the EOS R as my B camera and my C camera. And in that video, lots of other people also used the Sony a7S III. And if you go through and you read the comments, it's insane how so many of them, there's of course tons of positive ones, but I was scrolling through the comments on that video and so many were about like, this is just a sponsored content. This is just sponsored. It's like, I don't know how to tell you that it's not. But the other thing that popped up a lot is a lot of people were saying, why do these people need like these whole, tens of thousands of dollars of equipment, a whole room and a whole studio just for a YouTube video? You need all that just for a YouTube video, And that's a thought that I've heard many times, both as a criticism, where people will say, you don't need this camera. It's just, why do you need this just for a YouTube video? And also as like a self-limiting belief where people will then say, oh, I shouldn't really invest in that much gear because it's just for YouTube. And I kind of want to debunk both of those mindsets today, which, I'm not going to change everybody's minds. If anything, I'm more interested on the creator side of things. But for anybody who is listening or, who happens to stumble across this, who has had those thoughts of whatever, why does somebody need 3 full-frame mirrorless cameras to make a YouTube talking head tutorial? Well, the answer is because I freaking want to. And you don't need any more justification than that, right? But let's go back to this week then. So this was a comment I got. One of my more successful videos that I've released recently is the video where I talk about switching from Canon to Sony, which is funny because it's a video I wasn't even really planning to make, but the question popped up enough and I thought, okay, it's probably a good idea. So I made that video and it's done really well. And in that video, I try so hard. It's basically a condensed version of conversations we've had on this podcast many times over the past year, where I try very hard to emphasize that all cameras are great. I was just focusing on some specific needs that I had, and that I wasn't trying to objectively say something was better or worse or whatever. It's just kind of what suits me and my needs, what suits you and your workflow. And the video's been doing well. Part of a video doing well on YouTube means that it gets sent out, more like the algorithm surfaces the video to more and more people, which means more people are going to find you who are not familiar with you. I know that happens on some of my videos when people show up and start complaining about the cheesy jokes. Because if you watch the videos a lot, that's happening. It's part of it. But if you're brand new, you're like, stop with the stupid jokes. And it's like, you're new here. I get it. But, So anyway, this person wrote their version of the why do you need this just for YouTube comment. And I actually posted this on Twitter, and I never really post comments on Twitter, but I thought this was interesting. And the reason I thought this was interesting is because they were really polite. Like, it's a critical comment, and you can definitely see how it could kind of make your stomach turn. But I really feel like this person was like asking a question. They're really trying to figure this out. They're being as diplomatic and polite as possible. And so instead of like deleting it or ignoring it, I replied. So hopefully that they would see it. And then also, again, hopefully other people would see it, because it does sort of bother me for a few reasons. So this is a very diplomatic comment overall. And here it is. It says, this is the first time I've come across your channel, so I have no idea who you are. Frankly, I don't care what other people shoot with. Although I will say it is very strange. If you don't know who I am and you don't care what other people shoot with, why would you click on a video where someone you don't know is talking about what they shoot with? But anyway, one thing I noticed, though, is that many YouTubers claim to switch because they needed something better, yet there are no video/photo work of theirs anywhere online. It seems all they do is just YouTube videos of gear reviews. One popular review YouTuber, I won't name him, has all these cameras that are great for video, but when I tried to find anything that he's done, I found one really old video that he's done that looked like a beginner made it, and one video that was done in the last couple years that was just slightly better than the first, and that's it. And so I tried to find your work, not because I want to expose you, but because I was curious to see what awesome stuff you're capable of creating with those beautiful cameras. I couldn't find any. And so I really don't understand where this quote unquote, I need better tools to suit my needs comes from, when nothing is really being created with those tools. So there's the comment right there. And I get it. And it's kind of interesting because you're seeing me, okay, I'm talking about these cameras, these Sony cameras, they have all these capabilities. And then you're like, what's this guy doing with that? And you don't see, where's the short film that you shot? Where's the documentary that you shot? Where's the wedding photos that you shot with that? What is it? So I kind of get that. Like, there are things that just emotionally I respond to negatively in this comment just because I get defensive. But when I step back and look at it again, I really think this person is trying to figure something out. Like, this is something they've thought about and they're trying to work through it. And I don't think they're trying to be a jerk. I did block out their name when I posted it on Twitter, which is the first time I've done that. And I did want to explain why, because speaking of snakes eating their own tails, we talked about comments, and then this got a comment from other people saying, like, I really hate it when people black out names when they post comments because people should own it. And I actually used to subscribe to that. No pun intended, subscribe. But I used to also subscribe to that philosophy of, if somebody posts something with their username or their name online, I don't need to blur it out if I share it or post it or screenshot it because they posted it publicly. However, I have also learned that it's not just about that. It's kind of about what they signed up for. They posted that publicly on, my channel, for example, as a comment. But then when I go and share it to like my Twitter audience, which are people who have gone out of their way to find me because they probably like me for some reason, if they see someone being critical, there might be people in that group who would then be more tempted to reach out to that person and be rude or disrespectful. I would hope most people wouldn't. But it's something to kind of be aware of, that it's not that the person, they did post something with their name, they should own up to it. But I kind of feel like if you're then sharing that with a larger audience, it's important to be aware that some people might take that to kind of an extreme degree. That's a little dangerous and maybe not the best for the person. And so that's why I blur stuff out. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point because I've totally changed my opinion on that over the past few months. But anyway, that's a little pro tip on should you blur out commenter names or not. But here was my response to that. I wasn't going to reply, but I decided, again, sometimes I'll reply to negative comments like that. In this case, it wasn't really negative. It was more just questioning. But it's have to reply to the person and have to post a reply that other people could see, because maybe other people will read that comment and then see my answer to it. So here's what I said. I see what you're saying, and I've got a few thoughts from my point of view. Number one, making YouTube videos is using the gear. This channel pays my mortgage, so if there's a tool that's going to make my life easier, you better believe I'll use it. And each video is a chance to build up my own skill set. But I totally get that videos about gear to use for videos about gear is kind of like a snake eating its own tail. So that was my first point there. Second point, number two, prior to doing this full time, I was a high school digital media teacher for 11 years. It was a pretty specialized 4-year program that included a lot of cool stuff, professional collaborations, film and TV work, and things of that sort. But since my students were mostly under 18, I can't share much of that work online, but there is a playlist on my channel that covers some of what I should share. And number 3, the other side of it is that sometimes it's not practical or possible to share outside work. A client might have exclusive rights to a project or might not be comfortable with something being posted, and beyond all that, sometimes it's just not interesting to see snippets of a commercial or bits of a corporate talking head project, or the work is just out of date. TV news segments that I filmed in 2002 have zero relevance now, but they gave me the skills and experience to be able to do what I do. Of course, it's up to each individual to decide what and who they find credible. I'm not a filmmaker, and I don't claim to be, but I've been working with AV gear for most of my life, so that counts for something. And that was like as condensed as I could take my thoughts. So this person posted a comment, and I sort of took all the thoughts I have about this concept that I've seen all over the place and just like tried to condense them into this one reply. So it was like to him and everyone, or to them and everyone. But I kind of wanted to break that down a little bit more because it is important. So the first thing that I said was making YouTube videos is using the gear. And this was something that like the person's like, as they're literally watching my work online, I don't see any of your work online. I'm like, this is a YouTube channel with 300 plus videos. There's the work. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're watching a video. I don't see any examples of your video work. You know how this video doesn't suck? You know how it like looks good and sounds good and is edited well? There's the examples of the work. Like, why do you need more than that? I guess that's the creator in me talking. The viewer in me does understand it is fun to see people talk about stuff and then see how it's being used in like a different context, I guess. So, you know, it's just kind of fun when, you know, I've been watching a lot of videos about film production vehicles, like camera vans that, not ones that like film or whatever, but where people store all their gear, travel with it, and then do mobile shoots and stuff like that. And it's really cool because they're not just talking about, here's this camera that I use. They're really explaining like how it fits into this larger workflow and lets them do other stuff. And that is really interesting. So I do get that. But like making YouTube videos is utilizing the equipment. So like, I wish that it bothers me that doesn't count for anything. Like the thing that you're watching is an example of what the equipment can do. Now, what I did say here was this channel pays my mortgage, so if there's a tool that's going to make my life easier, you better believe I'll use it. And I kind of regret that I used that example. The reason I did was I wanted to prove that the idea of something being just for YouTube is valid. Like, YouTube is a valid thing. Like, I know you can easily be stuck in the mindset of YouTube circa 2006, where it's just weird videos of, you know, cats and pranks and whatever random stuff and, you know, low quality tutorials or whatever. But in 2022, you know, what was it? YouTube paid out $19 billion last year to creators. Like, it's kind of a bigger industry. And so I wanted to, the reason I said this channel pays my mortgage is because it was trying to convey the point that it's sort of bigger than just like making goofy videos on the internet, and it has a different value in our current world and the way that it works. But I actually feel bad for that example because it kind of makes it sound like that's the reason it's valid. And I want to be super clear that you do not need to earn money from something for it to have value. Like, you can create something that costs money. This channel, my YouTube channel, cost me $3,000 the first year that I had it because I just spent money on it. Didn't make any money from it. And I got so much out of that, you know, like what I got in return was worth way more than the $3,000 I spent on it. So it's not that you have to be earning revenue for something to have value, but it's just the idea that if you're saying, why does someone need this stuff just for YouTube? Like, please remember that there are channels out there, even run by single creators. I don't mean single as in not in a relationship, but individual people or a team of like 2 people that get greater viewership than network television shows with massive budgets and stuff. So it just seems like it's almost just such an old school, out of date mentality to look at like, oh, just for YouTube, it's just YouTube. And I think part of that does go with when you do something really well. It's like the Futurama quote, when you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all. When you make a good video and it's easy to watch and it's easy to listen to, people don't pay attention as much unless they're like really looking for it because that's what they're into. But people don't notice the 3 different camera angles. People don't notice that you're cutting between the camera angles on an emphasis of a syllable so that it feels more natural in like the sentence that you're speaking. People don't notice that, this one B-roll shot was panning from left to right because whatever that meant something. And now this one's going from right to left because that means the opposite. Like all of those little things that are just part of the skill set and the experience and the knowledge that you build up that make the thing you've created the experience that it is. If those are done really well, they really don't stand out. It's like that old quote of people who say they can always spot a toupee can really only spot a bad toupee because you don't notice the good ones. It's kind of like that. Like you notice the production elements of videos when they become obvious and stand out. You might not notice what kind of lens somebody's shooting with, but if the lens is focus breathing or going in and out of focus, then it's going to like draw your attention to, oh wait, there's a camera filming this person. What the heck? Like, what do I, now I'm distracted by that. So that's I don't know, that's kind of like part of it, is that YouTube is a valid outlet. And the world of YouTube is huge. You could be making short films on YouTube. You could be, you could just be doing gear reviews, whatever it is. There's a lot that could be done there. And yeah. So, and then I did talk about, like, I tried to explain like who I am. Well, I was a teacher for a long time. Can't share teacher stuff, but there is literally a playlist on my channel of like, here's as much of my professional educator experience that I can share on YouTube, like as legally possible. So you could check that out if you want. There are breadcrumbs, like, especially when I was teaching, it wasn't that hard to like piece together what my program was and find, like, you could spend 10 minutes or less and figure out like, oh, here's that daily broadcast that Tom and his students produce. But I'm not going to promote that on my channel because that would be weird and probably against some rules and stuff. But, you could piece it together if you want to. It's strange that this person wrote this whole thing without like clicking the about page on my channel where I try to explain all this. So, that's part of it. My point number 2 here was that kind of like, this is what I've done there. I've had projects, both ones that I've made and ones that I've helped other people make, like shown in theaters. Not like, nationwide, like an Avengers movie or something, but I've had projects shown in theaters, and you know what? It is super fun, but it does not add almost anything to your credibility. It's really cool to see your project up on a big screen and a big sound system, but for the most part, and this even goes back to like 2015, 2016, it's literally just a laptop that's connected to a projector. Like it's a bigger level of what I would do in my classroom or something. It's not like, here's the film stock for Tom Buck's, avant-garde student film or whatever. It's like, yeah, just there's a big projector and a big screen. And there's like 100 people in the room. Cool. My YouTube channel has gotten exponentially more views and eyeballs and greater audience from around the world than one theater thing. But it's like this weird idea that I guess if I had a student film or an indie film that played in a local theater for 50 people, it would somehow be more credible than me just talking about why, after 30 some odd years of being interested in cameras, why I think these ones are good. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's just sort of a thing there. And then the idea that, I appreciate the person Googling and trying to find work, but just because you can't find somebody's work through a Google search, while you are staring at their work on their YouTube channel, by the way, just because you don't see, like, here's my gallery, here's all my film awards, here's my IMDb page, doesn't mean they're not doing anything. There's a lot of, for example, wedding photographers and videographers. I've done a number of weddings. I don't like doing photos and videos of weddings, and I don't do them anymore, but I've done them. It's just that for the most part, a lot of them, I wasn't able to then like take that couple's picture and post it all over my channel. Some people do. Some people are able to do that, and they will literally even include it in their contract that, hey, if you hire me and stuff, like I'm going to do a behind the scenes video on how I filmed this wedding, and it's going to be on a YouTube channel. Like that is a real part of it. I didn't have any of that. Can't show any of those things. There's other projects, like I've done all kinds of like promotional things, lots of school district promotional things, lots of nonprofit things where it's a lot of like corporate talking head type videos that are very pretty. They sound good, they look good, they suit the need. I'm proud of them, but it's not something that's super relevant a year after it's been made. It's not something that's going to like really draw people into the YouTube channel over here. It's kind of done. Like it served its needs, so it is what it is. And a lot of times if you're hired or contracted to create something like that, again, those people own it because they paid for it. It's like, if you hire someone to build your house and they spend a lot of time building you a really nice house, you don't want them just showing up in the middle of the night to just show people your house and be like, yeah, look, see, I built this. Look at that. How level that wall is right there. I did that. Like, no, you're appreciative that they built you a really nice house, but then you want them to go away because the house is yours. These projects are kind of like that. They hire you, do the best job you can. They're very happy with it. And now they don't want you just taking it and also showing it and talking about it wherever. It's just part of it. And again, yeah, things being out of date. I could put stuff up that's, here's some like news footage that I filmed in 2002 with, this old DV camera over here that's in 480 resolution. And it's not going to really look that good. It's not going to help you think like, wow, that guy's the best videographer in the world, even though that looked pretty good for the time. So I don't know, like showing that isn't like the quality of that work isn't going to impress anybody. However, doing it and making that stuff and learning how to do that, that's where I learned about white balance and exposure and just how to recover from every weird mistake you might make and all that kind of stuff. Just putting together a gear kit of batteries, chargers, lenses, filters. That's where I learned all of that stuff so that now when I want to film something, I am more capable of doing it well, even though the thing that taught me that it's not something that's, I don't know, it's going to be super impressive now. And I don't know, I mean, in my room where I'm at right now, my studio space, there's a lot of artwork on the walls. But the rest of our house, for the most part, I think all but like one or two things are photos that I've taken. There's not like mass-produced artwork or other people's artwork. Like it's all photos that I've taken, like, some with me and Heather, some landscape, our dogs, everything. And they're blown up and they're framed and stuff like that. Nobody sees those except us. Those don't make money. But it's a pretty cool use of the gear. And they are good photos. Like I guess I could put them online and make a little portfolio about them or something. There's no real need to do that. But, my point being is that there might be work out there that the people you're watching and listening to do that just isn't publicly available or accessible, but it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about. You can pretty easily, using your own judgment, decide if someone's, full of it or not once you watch a few of their videos. And that's, I think that's important. That's just an important thing to remember. So that kind of then ties into my bigger point, which was, so it's kind of the explanation, like what you're seeing on YouTube is one part of it. But the other part of it is I personally don't care if somebody does just have a YouTube gear channel and that's what they do. They buy $50,000 cinema cameras and film a talking head tutorial with it. If that's what they want to do, there's nothing, I don't have a problem with that. You don't need to earn your gear or justify it more, right? Like if you can acquire something in a financially responsible way and you're not hurting anyone else, who cares? If you want to have an old Panavision film camera for your YouTube videos, by all means, go for it. Like you don't need to justify it to anyone. And there's this idea of like pro level gear and justifying gear that I have seen a lot on both sides of this. On one, it's like, it's that question of why do these YouTubers need all this gear? And the answer is, who cares? If they want it, go for it. Or if it's super easy, like Sarah Dietschy did a studio tour video a couple months ago, I think in December, where she showed like her main studio space setup. And I think she has 3 FX3s and like an A7S3. She has all these cameras, but the heart of it is 3 FX3s. And she explains like, these cameras are overkill for what we're using here, but they're really easy to work with. And when we got one and we really liked it and how it worked, or no, sorry, it's not FX3s, it's FX6s. It's the higher end one. I misspoke. But she explains they got one and it was really definitely like overkill, quote unquote, for, filming a talking head tutorial. But the camera just worked so well in that environment and it was so easy to use and it was so reliable. They loved it. So then they just got 2 more because they wanted a 3-camera setup. And for them, it was worth the investment because it made things so much easier and so much more fun. And you have 3 of the same camera and it worked really well. I have no idea how long it took to like pay that off or earn the money back, but I'm guessing it did because her channel's her business. But also, who cares? Like if your hobby is bike riding and you spend $8,000 on a carbon fiber super lightweight bike cycle, you don't really expect like, well, this is going to earn me that $8,000 back real soon. No, it's just going to cost you money because you're going to spend more money on accessories. You spend money on maintenance. The bike's going to depreciate over time and, maybe get beat up or worn out or whatever. It's not going to make you any money, but it's going to make you really happy, right? Because you're going to have this awesome bike that you're going to love riding and you're going to have a lot of fun with it. The room I'm in right now is filled with so many instruments that have never made me any money. They've just cost me a lot of money. And I'm not even like super good at them. Like I'm okay at most of them, but for how long I've been playing, no, I feel like I should be better. But I have a lot of fun with them and I really enjoy it. And I don't need 9 guitars. But it's really fun that over the past 20 years, I've accumulated 9 guitars that all do different things. Each one has its own story. Each one plays a little differently. Each one has its own memories to me. So when I pick up each one, it's a whole different experience for me. No one else ever needs to see that or know about that. And it's totally valid and it means something to me. And I think that that's okay. But for some reason, because we live in a world where everything has to be monetized all the time, it's like you shouldn't invest a lot of money in this expensive camera if it's not, the channel's not your main job or it's not earning revenue. It's like, who cares? If you're interested in cameras, buy it. Like, who cares, And then the idea of justifying your gear, because something that has popped up for me a lot, and this is something where I actually have gotten a lot of emails and other comments where people say things, this was a self-limiting thing I was talking about, where people are saying like, oh, I really want, the Rodecaster Pro, but I'm just starting out and I can't really justify spending $600 or, I'm just starting my YouTube channel. I don't know that, I can really convince my partner or whatever to get a full frame camera. What's a cheaper camera I could buy? And those are all practical considerations. If you do not have the budget for a Rodecaster or an FX3 or something, don't go into debt for it. Don't sell your kidney for it. Don't steal one or do anything like that. Of course. But if you can do it financially responsibly, like if it's within your budget and you're a grown person who is able to do these things, go for it. Like, who cares? You don't need to justify. You could have 0 subscribers. It doesn't matter. If it makes you happy, like you're going to be dead in a few years. You know what? All of us are going to be dead in 100 years max, probably significantly less. If you can buy a camera and it's going to make you happy for a while, like just buy the camera. Like no one's going to care in 100 years whether you could justify it for your whatever. Like just have fun. That's kind of the way I look at things, which I think actually makes sense, as weird and semi-dark as it is like, yeah, if I have the budget for this thing and I really want it and it's gonna be a fun way for me to explore a hobby and something I'm interested in, and it's gonna cause me to be curious about things and it's gonna help me to learn more about something that I'm interested in, I would rather do that than not do it. Like you don't need to justify or prove yourself. There doesn't need to be like this gatekeeping idea of you can only get good gear when you hit this point. You can only buy a professional camera when it generates revenue for you. You can only get 2 cameras when your audience hits this level. Absolutely not. If you don't have a YouTube channel right now and you want to build a full-on studio and have a 5-camera setup and hire a crew to like do your shows, go for it if you got the budget for it. That's not doing that and then growing a channel and everything are 2 totally different things. But if that's what you want to do, it's completely up to you. And it's all about just like what makes you happy and what you enjoy. And I'm talking a lot about gear right now. Some people really hate dealing with gear. Like Heather, for example, she likes learning about gear when she knows the specific reason she's learning about it. So right now she's doing a lot of vlogs with her Sony ZV-1. And one of the issues is the background. When she films herself, a lot of times the background is blown out because the exposure is like off. Normally, she's not someone who would care or be interested in ND filters at all. But because that's a problem she has and she wants it to look better, then she's interested in learning how to use the built-in ND filter on her camera. So that way she doesn't have that problem anymore. And it makes sense. But she's not going to want to spend her free evenings reading more about this camera and all this stuff like that. Whereas for me, the gear is part of the fun, right? Like I enjoy learning more about it, trying new things, figuring it out. Like it's always fun to get a new piece of equipment and think like, what can I do with this? How can I pair this with my other thing? How, what does this change? I really like that stuff. And I always try to do the balance between experimenting and exploring with new stuff, but also having a core bit of equipment that does stick with me for a long time. Because there's just something about, I like, this is my camera that I use for a long time. This is my stuff that's been around for a while. Like my guitars, I just talked about each one. They're pretty old and I can tell you stories about each one. I like the same thing. Like, here's my camera that I took to all these places. It filmed all these videos. Here's this microphone that I used for all these projects. Here's the Rodecaster that, helped build my channel to let me do what I do today. All those things mean something to me. So there's that kind of balance too. It's not just like, buy, like NSYNC said. It's more about, I guess I'm not advocating for like mindless consumerism. I'm just, you know what I'm saying. But in case you don't, I actually did make a note of my main takeaways that I really wanted to address here. And the biggest takeaway that you listening to this podcast that I hope you would take away if you need to is that you don't need to justify anything to anybody. It's all just about what you want to be happy. As long as you're responsible with it, it's okay. If you want that $50,000 cinema camera to film a talking head commentary in your bedroom, go for it. Be proud of it. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Like, I remember I bought my first camera slider, the Canova K2, back in 2013, I think it was, because I watched Dave Dugdale's video about it. Sliders, were newish at the time, and gosh, they really changed the dynamic nature of the kind of video you can make. With putting a DSLR on a slider, you were getting shots that no mere mortal individual could have gotten before. They're all like high-level production shots. So I bought this slider, I had my DSLR, and I had nothing to film. I didn't have a YouTube channel. I didn't do like a ton of other projects or anything. So it would just be going outside and filming stuff that I saw. It would be like, hey, it's Christmas time. I'm going to do some really cool slider shots of these ornaments over here. And that sounds kind of dumb. And I actually did feel sort of stupid for like, I spent a lot of money on this thing and I really don't have any purpose in doing that. But I had a lot of fun. Like, getting the external ideas of what are people going to think and what are people going to criticize me for out of my head and just focusing on like, this is really fun, was really helpful and really fun. And then beyond that, you never know where these things are going to be helpful, because later on, I guess I got the slider, must have been right when I started teaching digital media, because later on, like, knowing those skill sets and having that became so valuable to me in my job and in teaching, and now in like a YouTube channel and stuff. So the fact that I just kind of like chased those interests with no real purpose, but just because I was interested in it, came back years later to be hugely advantageous. And you cannot predict that kind of stuff. And I think that it's really important then to, I don't know, do yourself the favor of like indulging your curiosity, scratching that itch when you want to, if you can do so responsibly, having fun with it. And then you're just putting another tool in your toolbox of skills and knowledge, and you never know in the future when you're going to need that. The second takeaway has to do more with the people who make these kind of comments. And a lot of people make these, it's just for YouTube comments. And even when it's people like I brought up here in this episode, where it's like, they seem like they're genuinely asking a question. They're trying to figure this out. I really think that that's coming from an old, antiquated 2006 mindset of YouTube. It's so easy to poke fun at YouTube as a platform because it can be goofy and it can be weird. And there's all those wacky news stories that you see about crazy YouTubers doing crazy things. But again, YouTube is huge. What is it? A third of the Earth's population has an active YouTube account at this point of planet Earth's population. So there's a wide variety of stuff on there. And you have people with very small audiences who are starting channels and having tremendous personal growth journeys that are incredible and have nothing to do with how many people are watching, but are forever changing those people in positive ways. And you've also got the flip side of that, which is channels run by just one or two people that bring in more viewership and sometimes even more revenue than like network television with studios and deals and actors and huge crews and all this stuff. So it's foolish to ignore YouTube. It's foolish to diminish what it is in today's world and what it's become over the past 16 years. And I think it's just a short-sighted thing. It very, very, very much reminds me, going back to my Canon, why I switched from Canon to Sony video. I also had a few people telling me, if you want a camera for video, get a video camera. Don't get like a photo camera, expect to be a video camera. And, to me, that's just an antiquated mindset. That person is used to cameras that look like the A7S III being a photo camera. And that's what those kinds of looking devices were for a long time. And then they started having video functionality, but the photo functionality was first, and then video functionality grew and grew and grew. Whereas you have cameras like the A7S III, it is a video camera. Like even Sony promotes it as a video first camera. That's why it has a smaller, a 12 megapixel sensor, because it's for videos. And then it can also do photos. Doesn't matter that it looks like the same basic body as a film photo camera from 40 years ago. It's a video first camera. So it's just an antiquated way of looking at these things. The discussion of form factor, like, of course, like a dedicated cinema camera has benefits and ergonomics that are different than a, more traditional camera body style. But the point is that they're looking at something and saying, for a long time, this was just for photo cameras. Why are you even paying attention to video if like this is a photo camera? You should get a video camera. And I'm trying to say, hey, I know this looks the same as what you think of as a photo camera, but it's actually a video camera. YouTube is the same thing. There's a lot of people who look at YouTube and go like, that's that like goofy website where people watch funny videos, or there's like stupid pranks and stuff on there, or, every first grader in the world wants to be a YouTuber. That's all YouTube is. And it's like, well, yeah, there's that part of it and there's that history to it, but there's also the part where it's like a huge platform for every kind of like creative and personal expression, and also a massive economic driver that provides opportunities to people that they would have never otherwise had. Like, you can live anywhere on earth and start a YouTube channel and build an audience and potentially even turn it into a job or a part-time job, which, not that it needs to earn revenue to be justifiable, but thinking back to where it was like, oh, if I want to do something in media, I need to live in one of these very few places on earth where media production is a viable option. It's like, no, now you can do that from anywhere. Like, order your camera from B&H, set it up in the corner of your room anywhere on earth, get a microphone, and you're set and you're ready to go. And that is amazing. And you do not need to justify that to anyone. So if you watched the couples table a few weeks ago, I kind of brought this topic up very quickly towards the end of an episode. And Heather, when she heard it, it was like a red fog descended and she just went to a place. She had the same idea and the same emotions behind it that I have, but she had like an entirely different take that was really, really interesting. So I'd encourage you to, I know, go watch the end of every couples table episode, but maybe one day she'll be here to kind of give her take on this as well. But I tried my best to kind of like condense and convey all those thoughts about this thing here, both for people who have those thoughts to remember that like the thing you're watching on YouTube is the example of how the person can use these tools, but also as somebody who creates stuff, please don't feel like there is a threshold you need to meet or a requirement you need to meet before you are justified in, getting something or obtaining something. Just do what you want, do it responsibly, have a lot of fun, and don't hurt anyone else. So that's this week's episode. I look forward to hearing what you thought. If you have any thoughts about that, feel free. Again, tom@enthusiasmproject.com anytime. And that wraps it up. So thank you for spending your time with me. I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time.